Good evening. Welcome everyone to tonight's training session. We're going to take a look at Excel, working with dates and times. I am Scott Kinsella. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer and I specialize in all of the Microsoft end user Office products. So that includes things like Office, SharePoint, Windows, and Office 365 and all that sort of good stuff. I've been teaching these topics for well over 22 years, have a lot of experience teaching the Microsoft Office products. I live in Rockville, Maryland, outside of Washington, D.C. You can find me on the web at www.kinsella.net. That's my professional site. You can also find this video and other videos on YouTube by looking my name up. Just look for Scott Kinsella. So tonight, what we want to talk about in this session is probably one of the most frustrating things in Excel, and that's dealing with dates and time. It can be really tricky to deal with these for the primary reason that dates and time just don't follow any sort of regular measurement kind of system that makes any sort of sense. You know, we've got the metric system where everything is based on 10, and that makes a lot of sense. It's easy to translate things from one thing to another. But when it comes to dates and time, we've got this system that's been around for thousands of years that mathematically doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So we're going to spend some time first off trying to understand how Excel handles date and time. We have to have some way to take this weird system that we're used to and translate it into something that Excel can understand. And it's that translation process and understanding how that works in the background that when you understand that will make dates and times much more clear on what's going on. Then we'll talk about the formatting of dates and time. So that's really kind of one of the keys to the whole thing going on here, is that kind of once you understand, definitely once you understand what's going on with dates and times, a lot of times just comes down to a formatting issue to fix any sorts of problems. Then what we want to take a look at is some various date functions and calculations. So we'll dive into working with dates, working with different date functions, and some sort of interesting calculations that you can do with dates. Excuse me. We'll also do the same thing with time. We're going to look at some time functions and some interesting calculations that you can do with time. There's also generally a problem that we have when dealing with time specifically, and that's the ambiguity of time itself. And I know that sounds really kind of ethereal, but it'll make more sense when we get to that part. I've got everybody muted, so if you do have a question, please just type it in the conversation or IM window. I'll see it over on my other monitor, and I'll be happy to answer that. Also, I may occasionally ask y'all some questions, so when I do stop and do that, I'd appreciate seeing some answers over in the conversation window. So let's get things started. So as I mentioned, our system of dates and times doesn't follow any sort of regular system, and I wasn't sure how to phrase this properly. I mean, sure, you know, 60 seconds equals a minute, and 60 minutes equals an hour, and so on and so forth, but there's just not any system to this that makes any sort of mathematical sense. It's just kind of, this is just the way it's been done for thousands and thousands of years, and we just kept it. You know, unfortunately, when the metric system was invented, they did everything but deal with time. So because the system of time, because time doesn't follow any sort of regular numeric pattern from level to level, we've got to have some way to express that on a computer, because quite frankly, computers don't like it when number systems are wacky like time is. So internally, Excel converts dates and time to something called a serial number. Okay, we're going to explain what those are. Okay. So, oops, wrong window. There we go. So serial numbers, and that's cereal with an S, not cereal with a C like the stuff that we eat, but serial numbers are a way of representing dates and times in a way that Excel can understand them as well as perform mathematical operations with them. Okay? Dates, so let's break this system down and get an understanding of this. So first off, dates are represented by a whole number, starting with a fixed point in time and counting up by whole numbers. So here's what we mean by that. Whenever you put a date into a spreadsheet, you may enter a particular date, but Excel goes through a little translation process and turns that date into some sort of just regular old whole number, or what's called a serial number. The system is based on basically a fixed point in time. They just said, let's start with January 1900 and just count up from there. And this system, and this is going to seem a little weird, starts with January 0, 1900. Okay? In computers, remember, the first number is always 0, not 1. Okay? In our world, with us humans, the first number is always generally number 1. But in computer land and in computer world, 0 is actually always the first number. There's also a reason when it comes to dealing with time as to why there is a January 0, 1900. So that's the more about this later. So continuing on from that, basically every day from January 0, 1900 all the way on up is just numbered sequentially. So day number one is January 1st, 1900. Day number 2 is January 2nd, 1900, and so on and so forth. According to Excel's serial numbers, today's date, so Wednesday, August 17th, 2019, today's serial number is 43,683. Okay, so basically if you entered today's date, so 08/07/2019, if you enter that into a spreadsheet, that's what you're going to see. But internally, Excel is converting that to a serial number, and for today's date, it's converting it to 43,683. Okay, now this is all going to be really important later. You're never going to have to do the translation process. Excel does that for us, but it's important to understand that this is what it's doing. It's very important to the whole kit and caboodle here. Okay, so if dates are serial whole numbers, what's time? Okay, well, time is represented by partial or decimal numbers, because when you think about it, time is really just part of a day or part of a date. So 12 midnight is basically 0.000. Okay, 6 a.m. is 0.025. Okay, 12 noon is 0.500. 6 p.m. is 0.750, and so on and so forth. That basically the 24 hours gets broken up into different decimal numbers. Okay, I just put 5 example times there. Of course, every hour has its own time, and you could break it down even further than that. And as a matter of fact, in breaking it down even further, just to understand, 1 minute is equal to, I got to read this closely, 0.0006944 part of a day. A second is equal to 0.00001157. Excel can go all the way down to 1/1000th of a second. I didn't want to put the number in here. It was really obnoxious, but just understand that Excel can break a day down all the way down into 1/1000th of a second units. Okay. Now, where are we going with all this? So, taking this the next step, and here's the part that's going to be kind of interesting, or something unique to understand. While we humans often consider dates and time as different measurement systems, right? For days, we've got a calendar. For time, we've got watches, and we kind of think of them as different things. But the reality is that date and time is all the same continuous scale. They both basically represent the passage of time or a fixed point in time. Okay? Again, we humans tend to think of a date as one thing and a time as something else. But the reality is both of those just really describe a point in time together. It's all on the same scale. It's just all in how we've broken it up. Why is that important? Well, because in Excel, this whole system of serial numbers and partial decimal numbers all works together, because Excel basically treats dates and time as the same thing. Since they're all in the same scale of time, we can represent a date and a time with a single number. Okay? Dates are the whole numbers, and time is the partial decimal number. So let's look at some examples. Or, sorry, before we get to the examples, so in other words, the date is the whole number to the left of a decimal, and the time is the number to the right of the decimal, right? So date and time to Excel is all the same thing. It's not separate stuff like we tend to do as humans. We, again, break it up between calendars and watches and clocks and so on and so forth. But to Excel, it's all the same thing. It's all the same scale. So let's take today's class and its start time as an example. So for example, today's date and the start date of today's class can be represented by the number 43683.7708333333333. 43683, as we already said, is the date serial number for today. Okay, so for 8/7/2019, the serial number, the part that's to the left of the decimal, is 43,683. The start time for today's class was 6:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Well, that time is, in Excel terms, expressed as 0.7708333. So I could very well type into an Excel spreadsheet. I could have typed that number, and Excel, through formatting and other things, would understand the date and time that we're talking about here. Okay, so 43683.7708333 to Excel can represent a date and a time. Now, again, thankfully, we never have to figure that out. Excel does all that work for us. But internally, if I put that date and that time into a cell, that number, this number here, this 43683, blah, 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 that's what all that business gets turned into. Okay, this is really key to understanding how Excel deals with dates and time. All right, so let's take it up another notch. Let's take it another step. Because this is the part that really can be interesting or confusing, or you maybe never even thought about. So, since dates and times really are all on the same scale, all right, to Excel, it's all the same thing. It just starts at January 0, 1900 and just kind of keeps on going. Since it's all the same scale, since dates and times are the same thing, basically, if you enter a date without a time, there's actually still a time associated with it. And if you enter a time without a date, there's actually still a date associated with it. That's interesting. Let's explain that a little further. So for instance, if I enter a date without a time, if I go into an Excel cell and I just put in today's date, 08/07/2019, okay, we've already seen that that's converted to 43684. Why do I have two different numbers there? 684 or 683? Oops, I think I have some typos here. All right, well then y'all get the point, right? Oh, I have some typos here with the numbers. That's fine. Okay. When you enter that date, Excel converts it to 43684.0. So that means that the 0 is midnight. Okay? So when I enter that particular date, 8/7/2019, even if I don't put a time on it, Excel does automatically, because 0 equals midnight. Okay? So whenever I enter a date, even if I don't enter a time automatically gets assigned to it, basically 0, which is midnight. On the flip side, time works the same way. If I enter a time without a date, here's where it gets kind of interesting, weird. Remember I talked about this earlier. If I enter a time without a date, the date is assumed to be that fictitious date of January 0, 1900. So if the time is, if I just go into a cell and I enter 7:30 p.m., that's actually converted to 0.8125, Well, again, we've got something on the left and something on the right. The something on the left is the 0 point, and that represents January 0, 1900. Okay? So a date without a time, if you enter it that way, still has a time, and a time without a date still has a date. Surprise! This hopefully is starting to maybe illuminate some of the problems that you may have ever had with dates and times. Okay? So basically, oops, sorry, I didn't want to go to that slide just yet. So, to review, dates and times just get internally converted to some sort of whole number and partial number. Okay? And in that conversion process, the other thing to understand is that even if you enter a date without a time, there is still a time associated, 12 midnight. Or if I enter a time without a date, there actually still is a date. It's January 0, 1900, because we don't want to actually make it January 1st. Okay? Again, by the way, folks, if you have questions, just type them in the chat window. I'll try to answer them as best I can as I'm going along, or you can wait for your questions until later. Okay? So let's kind of see this in action. All right, I have Excel open over here somewhere. Let's pull Excel and let's blow this up. Let's kind of see what's going on here. So let's enter, I'm going to enter today's date into a cell. There we go, 8/7/2019. That is today's date. Now, as I said, there's a couple of things that have already happened here, at least internally in the product. First off, it's converted it to a number. Internally, that 08/07/2019 has been converted to something called a serial number. The second thing is, even though I only typed a date, there's actually a time there also. So let's prove this in a moment. Because a lot of this all just comes down to formatting. And that was the next slide that I wanted to move to here. Basically, the way time and dates are displayed in Excel just has a lot to do with formatting in a cell. And when we get unexpected results with a formula or even just typing something into a cell, a lot of times it just has to do with that there's an incorrect format placed on the cell. Okay? And these problems can be remedied by applying the correct format to the cells. So let's prove that. Let's go here. Let's come back over to Excel, and there's my date. I'm going to move back up to that cell, and I want you to notice that up in the ribbon, up here in the number group, notice Excel automatically assigned that the date format. Okay, this is just one of the handy things that Excel does automatically. And just for fun, let's put another date in there. Let's put 9/2/2019 in the cell below. And again, notice that when I typed that date, Excel applied a date format. Now, to prove the whole business about serial numbers, let's just change the format. So let me go back up here to cell A1, which has today's date on it, and let me apply, instead of a date format, let's apply a number format. So I'm going to go to the number group here on the Home tab. I'm going to click the drop down here. These are just some quick formats that I can access, and I'm just going to click number. And notice that that date gets changed into a number. Okay, and I guess 684 is the correct number. Probably 683 came up because I was writing some stuff yesterday and I didn't make an adjustment in my spreadsheet. Anyways, y'all get the point. But I want you to notice something else. Notice that there's a .00 there. Okay? I can also basically turn this back into a date simply by going to the drop down here. Okay, selecting, let's just do short date, and notice it changed it back. And I can even do the reverse. Let's say, okay, maybe I'd like to know what date number 40,000 is. Great, I'll just type 40,000 into a cell over here. All right, that's just a number. All right, well, what was day 40,000? Well, that's easy. I can come up here, again, to the same drop down. I can select, let's do short date. Okay, day 40,000 apparently was July 6th, 2009. So basically any number can be converted to a date, and any date can be converted to the number. By the way, the limit of this, Excel can handle dates up to, let me just double check here, through December 31st, 2078. Oops, I'm sorry. No, wait a minute. I'm sorry. I'm reading the wrong thing there. I'm sorry. Excel can handle dates all the way through December 31st, 9999. Okay, so let's try this. 12/31/9999. Just out of sheer curiosity, what does that turn into? All right, that is date 2,958,465. So Excel can handle dates all the way up to there. Okay. Now, let's go prove the other thing I talked about, and that is every date has a time and every time has a date. So right now this cell is just formatted to show a date. But if I apply a different format that has, for instance, maybe if I just apply a time format, watch this. Okay, you don't see it here, but if you look up in the formula bar, you'll notice that the date and time are displayed up here. Okay, notice, see, the date is still there and the time is there. Okay, what time is 000000? Well, in military time, that's 12 midnight. Interestingly enough, notice that Excel didn't lose the actual date that's there. If I go back up to the format and I change this back to short date, notice the date's still there. Okay? So I can switch the formats around. And let me go to, let's find a format that's got the date and the time on it. I think if I go to, here we go, let's pick this one. There we go. So here again, further proof. I never typed a time in that cell. All I typed was 08/07/2019. But the reality is that Excel is going to store that as 8/7/2019 at 12 a.m. And again, I can do the same thing with the time. So let me come over here and let's put in 7:30 p.m. Okay, Excel knows that that's a time. I didn't type a date. All right, so what date is associated with that? Anyone? You can type it in the window if you want to, or if not, you can sit there and just stare at the screen. So what date is going to be associated with that time? Well, we can find out. Let's go change that to short date. Sure enough, we'll look at that. And thank you, Kyle. Kyle's got the right answer. Yep, absolutely. January 0. And look at that. Again, I can prove that by just changing the format on the cell. Notice it says 0100. That's that fictitious date, 1900. And again, if you look in the formula bar, all right, the time is still there. Now mine changes to military because I've got my Windows default set to military time because I'm weird like that and I'm a computer geek and it's just easier to do things on computers in military time. But anyways, but notice, even though I formatted it as a date, the time is still there. And even this can be changed to a number. All I gotta do is switch the format. Look, I can come here and say number, and that number is, okay, since it's not showing the whole thing, basically that's 0.8125. So this is key, I think, to understand. Just this little bit right here is key to understanding dates and times and how it all works. And I think, coming back to my slides over here, often, again, most problems with dates and times in formulas or functions occur when there's an unexpected result. You know, you do something with dates and it comes out with a number and you're like, no, I expected a date. Or, you know, if it's the opposite of what you expected, it's generally a formatting problem. Basically, Excel is showing you a number, you expected a date, or it's showing a time and you expected a number, or any one of those three possibilities. Now again, I keep saying dates and times as separate things. Remember, the dirty little secret in Excel is that dates and times are all the same thing. All right? We humans treat it separately. The reality is it's all the same thing. Okay? So it's always a formatting thing. Generally, it's almost always a formatting deal. So even if it's not there, well, it kind of still is. All right, I can take this cell. Let's reformat that just as a regular short date. Okay, there's a time there. We just didn't type it. Okay. We'll do more with this as we go along, but I think this is fundamental to understanding, gee, why is my spreadsheet not behaving? Why are weird things happening when I do that, or when I do that calculation? All right, so here's the slide. If you expect a number and you end up with a date or time, just format the cells with the appropriate number format, or vice versa. If you get a number, format it with a date or time. Really, I think, actually right now I could probably just dismiss all of you and say, there you go, there's the solution to probably most of your problems, but we'll go into more details. But really often that's what it is that when something doesn't, when it comes to dates and times, and the answer that you get or that's displayed isn't what you wanted, it's probably a formatting problem. Now, time presents some other interesting issues along those lines, and we'll deal with that when we get to the section on time. So sit tight. There is more interesting stuff with time specifics that we have to deal with. So now that we've got all that background and that we understand what's going on in the background with Excel, basically, look, dates and times are all the same thing. It's all on the same scale. Dates are serial numbers, time is the decimal part of the number, and really it's all just one number. Let's start to dig into some of the things that we can do with different date functions and calculations. There are a few, I've posted on this slide just a few functions that you can use in regards to dates and time. Let's just take a look at how some of those work in a spreadsheet. If you want to put in today's date in a spreadsheet, you can just type today. If I could spell it right, there we go, today, with an empty set of parentheses, and hit enter, and that's going to display today's date. Now realize though that this is a function, or what we call a dynamic function, which means this cell is going to change every day, okay, because what's in that cell is not actually 08/07/2019, but rather the today function. So if I save this and open it up tomorrow, cell A4 is going to display a different number. Okay? Oops, what did I just do? Okay, whoops. I don't know what I just hit there. I hit Control asterisk and it did something strange. Oh, that's what I was looking for. I was looking for the shortcut. Now, if you just want to put today's date in, I'm sorry, I hit the wrong shortcut. If you just want today's date just to be entered into the cell, there's actually a keyboard shortcut for that, and it's Control semicolon. Okay, notice the difference with that is that it actually enters the text of the date, not the function. So if you look at cell A4, that's a dynamic function. That's the today function, which means tomorrow that cell will read differently. Cell A5 is going to stay the same, but the way I got that date in there is I did Control semicolon. Okay, and that's the way to get today's date. There's another function called now, which is very similar. All right, now that's displaying pound signs because there's not enough room there. The difference between today and now is that the now function puts in the date and the time. Of course, that's a little bit of a lie, isn't it, right? Because again, even when we've got a date, there's still a time there, right? What's the default time if I don't enter it? And that's a question for the audience, right? Even if I don't enter a time, what time is still there? Yeah, it's midnight. Yep. And whether you want to express that as 12 a.m. or 000, either way is correct. All I'd have to do is just change the format on the cell to display it. Basically, in a lot of ways, the today and the now function are exactly the same. It's just what they display and how they format it initially is different. That's it. That's the only difference between those. Okay? There are some other functions that we'll take a look at as I go through some of these other examples. We've got functions like date, date value, day, month, and year. We'll take a look at some of those as I go through some of these examples. So for some of these other practical examples, what I'd like to start to go through, will the now function change if you open it? Oh yeah, absolutely. The now function is also dynamic, just like the today function. As a matter of fact, if I close this spreadsheet and open it back up, the now function would recalculate itself. I can also force it to recalculate itself by pressing F9. That is the refresh button for codes, well, I should say for all functions in a spreadsheet. That's basically what's called recalculate. So notice I pressed F9 on my spreadsheet. Notice now the now function says 1902. Okay, in 5 minutes, if I pressed F9 again, that would update itself. Okay, now the today function won't, because with today, it's just putting in the date with the assumed time of midnight. With the now function, it is date and time, but it can update whenever I press F9. Okay? All right, so let's go through some procedures with generating dates, because there's some really cool stuff built into Excel for this. So let's start off. Now, these are actually non-formula type stuff. This is actually some things that we can do in Excel that maybe you didn't know about. So I'm going to just start off with a date here. I'm just going to type, oh, sorry, that's cell. Oh, here we go. And here's an example of a formatting problem, right? I forgot that I'd formatted that cell as a number. I entered a date and it changed. So I know exactly what the issue is now, right? That needs a date format. Because remember, just because you press delete on a cell doesn't mean the formatting got erased. This is where people run into a lot of issues. If you really do, since it came up, if you really want to make sure a cell is empty, don't press delete on your keyboard, because delete on your keyboard only deletes the text. It doesn't delete formatting. If you really want to make sure that a cell has no formatting and no contents, what you want to do is come over here to the editing group on the ribbon. You want to click on the one that looks like a little eraser. It's called clear, and you want to say clear all. And that's going to get rid of all of the formatting and the content in that cell. And notice now my cell format is back to general. It's not a number anymore. So now I can type 01/01/2019 and it's going to behave. Okay? Now, as far as generating a series of dates, well, it's pretty easy in Excel. All I got to do is type the first date, then take my mouse and put it, if you look, in every cell there's always a tiny little square in the bottom right hand corner down there. And when I hover my mouse exactly over that square, you'll see it, excuse me, it turns into a thin plus sign. And if I hover right over that and drag down, I can generate a series of dates, just basically incrementing by one at a time. And I don't need to type anything else. Look at that. Okay? We can take this further by maybe putting a couple of dates in there. So if I put 01/01/2019, and then let's do a week later. So that's going to be 01/08/2019. So we know that those dates are 1 week apart. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to highlight both of those. Okay, I have to highlight both. Then I'm going to grab the bottom corner of that and drag down. And now notice Excel is smart enough to figure out that I want dates that are a week apart. And it's going to put all the dates in there. So there we got 1/1, 1/8, 1/15, 1/22, and so on and so forth. You can basically make any pattern that you want that Excel can figure out. Basically, it has to be evenly spaced. So I can't do a sequence where there's 2 days apart, then 3, and then 4. That Excel can't figure that out. That's not going to work. It always has to be a consistent interval. So for instance, maybe I want to go every 5 days. So let's go 01/06/2019. All right, I highlight both of those. I drag it down, and Excel figures it out. There we go. Now we've got every 5 days. Okay? Now, what if I wanted to do weekdays? That's where things get a little more interesting, right? Because I could do this, and maybe I could type out the first 5 days, but Excel's just going to continue on with the day-by-day pattern. So there's another little trick to this. If you want to generate a series of dates where you're just displaying weekdays, then what you need to do is this. Now this is a trick. This is something that you probably never do anywhere else. where I'm actually going to go again to that same spot where I would drag down. And normally when you drag on something, it's always a right drag, right? You always, whenever there's instructions that say drag blah blah blah, it's always implied that you're using your left mouse button. There are rare occasions, though, usually in Windows, where you actually right drag and it does something else. And in Excel, we've got the same deal. You can actually do a right drag here, and it's going to give us a little menu. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to right drag this. My mouse is misbehaving. I'm going to right drag that down. My right mouse button, I think, is having a little problem with the mouse. Let's try that again. One more time. Right drag. Yeah, see, there's something wrong with my one more time. There we go. When I let go from the right drag, there, now it's working, I actually get a pop-up menu. And on this, we've got fill days, fill weekdays, fill months, and fill years. Well, if I do fill weekdays, there we go. Now I can get every weekday. Note to self, clean your right mouse button later. I think there's must be something stuck in there or a problem. I'll have to clean that up. Right? Isn't that cool? That's how we can get weekdays. You know, overall, Excel is pretty smart when it comes to dates. For instance, again, if I do this, if I put in 131 and then 02/28/2019, those are the last days of January and February. Excel knows what I meant by that, and it actually now can do the last day of the month. Look at that. 331, 430, 531, 630, so on and so forth. As long as you give it the first two, it can figure out what you want. If you only do the first, if you only do one, it can't always figure it out. Okay? So you can always generate a set of dates just simply by using what's called fill series. Just simply drag down. All right? And it can be any date that you want. Again, if I want, maybe I need the 15th of every month. Okay, so I'll go 02/15/2019. There, that's all I need. Give it the first two. Okay, drag down. Excel figures it out. Okay, remember, it's got to be a consistent interval between every single one of them. I can't go one date 5 days apart and then 10 and then 8. It doesn't work that way. Okay. By the way, this also happens to work with months and day names. This is just a little bit of an aside, just a little extra information, but just so you know, this actually works with the words too. If I type Sunday and drag down, you'll actually get the days of the week. This also works with months. If you type any month and drag down, you will also get the months of the year in order. And you can start with any one of those and just drag down. You don't even need to type the first two. Okay? So that's a little extra thing. It's actually not directly related to date and time functions, but because it's all sort of the same thing, it's easy to figure that out. Or that's an easy trick to know. Okay? So there we go, generating series of dates and numbers. I see somebody typing a question, so hopefully that will come through fairly shortly. And I'm going to delete all that business. I don't need it anymore. And I'm going to delete all this business. Get rid of those dates. And we'll wait for David to type his question. And while he's doing that, what's the next example I want to go to? Okay, yeah. All right. So the next thing, let's look at our spreadsheet here, converting a non-date string to a date. All right, this is where things get kind of complicated or interesting, is that when a lot of times if you import dates over from another source or you copy and paste something, often it doesn't get recognized as a date. So there's some ways to fix that. Okay, now I see the question. How about if you want to see the weekday that's every 2 weeks? Every other Friday is a payday. Ooh, well, let's see. I think that's pretty easy to figure out. So let's go with this week. Sure, I just have to enter the first two. 2019. Remember, you just got to give it the sequence. Then 2 weeks after that is 08/23/2019. That's it. That's the pattern. Now I just pull it down, and there you go. There's your paychecks for the next There's your paychecks for the next couple of years if you could get paid every 2 weeks. Okay. Now, other places it's weird, like for instance, or paydays. Like I've had jobs where I get paid on the 16th and the last day of the month. So there's no real way for me to do that as a pattern because the 16th is always consistent, but the last day always changes. So that just doesn't work. I mean, essentially, yeah, you can do any pattern. I could do every 11 days if I needed to. All you have to do is supply the first 2 and then drag both of those. That's always the key. Don't type the first 2 and then drag the second one because then it's not going to work. You have to highlight both of them and then drag down. Okay? Now let's talk about converting dates. When you import dates from other sources, for instance, a database or maybe something on the web, often what happens with dates is that sometimes Excel doesn't treat it as a date. It doesn't recognize it. But Excel has gotten smarter over the years to recognize when something should be a date but isn't. Let's see if I can force it to mess up here. Let's treat this as text. No, I didn't want that number. Let's do this. Let's see if I can force it here because I don't really have something to import. Okay. And nope, it's not going to give me the little box. All right, this is a little hard to replicate, and I probably should have had an example. But basically, if something comes over as that looks like a date but isn't getting treated like one, 9 times out of 10, Excel is going to display a little yellow caution flag here. And if it's showing on the entire column, you can just highlight the entire column or all of those. You can click that little button, and then it will convert all of them to dates. If it's not, there are some other tricks that I don't have time to go into, but what you can look at is one of the tricks is basically multiplying the column by itself. Basically, if you take the column, multiply it by 1 and paste it, that'll often fix it. There's also a trick using the text functions, which are called left, mid, and right, and combining that with the date function. Again, I don't have enough time to do those examples here because they're kind of complicated. If I do an advanced dates and times class, I could get into those. But those are some helpful things to look up if you're having trouble with Excel treating something as a date. But pretty much always now, it's going to do what it needs to. It's going to figure stuff out. Let me change this back to a short date. Okay, and again, other things you can try is actually apply a date format and see if that does the trick. Again, one of the other tricks is that if you get the little yellow caution symbol, it will be over here on the left. Just highlight all of them and select it. Another one is to again multiply it by itself, or create a formula that actually breaks it up into the pieces that we need to get it to do the right thing. Okay, all right. Now let's talk about our next example here, and that is calculating the number of days between 2 dates. And there's a really important thing that we have to think about here when we're trying to figure out the length of time between stuff. So let me just start off with a new sheet here, and let me blow this up. And let's say start date and end date. Okay, and let's say that I'm doing a coupon promotion of some sort for my store, and I'm going to start that promotion on August 1st. Okay, and I guess the cells aren't wide enough here, so let's just widen those. That's what all those pound signs mean. And we're going to end the promotion on the 15th. And what I'd like to know is the length of that promotion. How long did that promotion go? And immediately we start to panic because we're like, oh my gosh, we've got dates involved here. How am I gonna do mathematics with that? Well, you don't have to worry about that. Excel does it for you. That's why it converts stuff to serial numbers. So all I need is a regular old formula here that subtracts one thing from another, right? I can just go equals, that's my way to start any formula or function, and then basically I can say B2 minus A2. That's it. I don't need anything special. Because remember, these dates already internally to Excel have been converted to numbers. So all I gotta do is subtract one from the other. So now I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to come back with a 14. So that tells me that there's 14 days there. As a quick aside, remember that we could actually change that. If you got something that looked like this instead, if it comes back with a date, you're like 114, 1900, what the heck's that? Remember, it's just a formatting problem. Remember, any date can be a number and any number can be a date. So let's just switch this back to a number. All right, now, here's the thing we need to, there's a problem here with doing this. I want you to all to think for a second. I'm starting the promotion on August 1st. It's going to run all the way through August 15th. Is this answer correct? Is the answer there in cell C2 correct? Kyle says no. How about the rest of you? Do we have to pick teams here? David, Bart, what do you guys think? Is that answer right? Or you're all just going to jump on the Kyle bandwagon? Nope, nope, don't think so. Why? What's wrong here? How do you know there's something wrong? I mean, isn't 15 minus 1 14? Isn't that right? Ah, Kyle's got the answer. Here's a problem when we're dealing with dates and we're dealing with subtraction or even addition. When we're dealing with when we're dealing with just regular mathematics and we're subtracting one number from the other, we don't worry about the starting point or including the start point. But when it comes to dates, we actually have to think about that. I was very careful when I said something. I said the promotion is starting on the 1st and it's going all the way through the 15th. Okay, well that means that the promotion doesn't run 14 days. It actually runs 15 days. Okay? So this is something you have to be conscious of whenever you're doing any mathematics with dates, is that often if you're actually calculating lengths of time, you actually need to add one. The right way to do this formula would actually be B2 minus A2, and if we really want to get picky about it, we should put some parentheses here. You don't really need them, but let's just put some parentheses for fun. The correct formula here would actually be B2 minus A2 plus 1. And that's actually going to get us the correct length of the promotion. Okay? And you're like, wait a minute, why does that happen with Excel? Well, think about it. Why would this come up incorrect? There's another reason that's related to what I said earlier about dates and times when we enter them in Excel. Can anybody guess it? And this is why it comes up this way. Let me ask it this way. Cell A2, I entered the date of 8/1/2019, but what actually all is there? What is assumed by Excel when I put that there? Not serial. You got a serial number. You're on the right track, but the time, there we go. Kyle's got it. Really, what this cell is 08/01/2019 at 12 midnight. Okay, let's widen this up so we can see what's going on here, right? This is, by default, 08/01/2019 at 0000, which means this right here, since we didn't type a time, is actually what? Well, it's actually 08:15, this, right? That's the actual, oops, sorry, I did 12 p.m., I meant 12 a.m. All right, let me just put this as zeros. Okay, that's what this cell is and this cell is, right? Because internally, this is what's here and this is what's here. So according to what I just did, I basically, since this stops at midnight on the 15th, we don't actually get into the 15th at all. So that's why without the plus 1, this actually comes up as 14. Okay? That's what's going on there. Now, there's two ways to fix it. The harder way to fix it would be to actually put in the times on those cells. To actually say, no, this start date is at this date at 00 and this one at 11:59 or whatever. Really, the easier way to fix it is with the +1. That's just really the easier way to do it. But again, that's why it comes up wrong, is understanding there's a time there even though you don't see it. Okay? So you got me? So you got it there? Dates and times, that's what happens, is that if you're going to do any mathematics with them, you have to think about, do I need to include the day that's there at the end or not? Because there's a time actually on those cells as well. Very important. Okay? All right, let's go to our last example, and that's calculating the number of work days between two dates. This gets interesting, and I have this open over here. Let's open up work days. And this involves a function. There we go, and let's blow this up a little bit. So let's say we're trying to calculate the number of work days between two dates. Okay. The thing about work days is that, well, first off, yes, we're going to assume that all work days are just Monday through Friday. Okay, that's pretty much a given in most situations. But there's also an additional problem with work days, and that is that occasionally there's holidays. Now, what you might be tempted to do in your calculation of the number of work days between two dates is to kind of manually try to figure out when the holidays are. But that could be a lot of work. So what we actually have is that we've got a function in Excel that can do this for us, that can help figure that out of the actual number of work days, and this function is called net work days. What it will figure out is two things, is that it'll figure out the work days, but it will also factor in any day that you decide is a holiday. Okay, because think about it. Holidays are not consistent from state to state, from country to country, to so on and so forth. Okay, the holidays could be, some companies give certain days off and some do not. So when we want to use this net work days function, what we need to do first is somewhere in the spreadsheet, we just need to list, you need to make a little table. Actually, you don't even need all the information that I've done here, or that was done here. I didn't do this, but it's just helpful. What you need to do is you put in the series of dates that should be left out of the overall calculation. And for your own reference, if you want to, you can just cite the actual what those holidays actually are. Okay, so all I need to set up is a range of numbers that are the days that should be excluded from the calculation. Then what I do is, now I've got a sample down here. Let's say I want to find out the number of working days between Tuesday 1/1/2019 and Monday 1/7/2019. There are 4 work days there, okay, right? Because New Year's Day is a day off and Monday is a work day. Well, let's look at that function. Here it is. Let's display it in the cell so you can see what's going on. It's called net work days. The net work days function takes 3 parts. The first part is the start date. So in this case, that's A15. That's that date right here. Then it takes the end date. So that's this cell right here. And then the third part is, where is the range of cells that have the dates that should be left out? Now here it's expressed with absolute references. You don't have to do it that way, but I would recommend that if this is going to be a function that you're going to copy. All right, so we've got $A, $2 through $A, $11. That's this range over here. Those are the dates that we want to leave out. And that gets us that there are 4 work days from these dates. All right, well, how many work days are there for this entire year, starting the Tuesday the 1st, going through the 12/31? Okay, well, this year, factoring these out and then factoring out Sundays and Saturdays, there are 251 work days. All right, I could change that if we added another holiday in there. What's another holiday? Let's just say let's go right here and let's add in Valentine's Day. So let's go 02 04 2019. Okay, that's Valentine's Day. Now I need to fix my formulas down here because they were done with absolutes. So let's come down here to the working days. Oh, it fixed it. Yep. Okay, so the 4 doesn't change, but look here. Yep, this one changed 250 because I added another holiday. All right. So if I added more, there'd be more holidays in there. So if you need to figure out how many work days there are, there you go. Okay. Any questions on that example? Those are the 4 example ones that I wanted to get to. Generating a series of dates, talking about converting, calculating the number of days between 2 dates. Remember, the important thing there to remember is that +1 business. And then calculating the number of work days between 2 dates. That's using the function called net work days. Okay? All right. Any questions? There are tons of other examples. I could do a whole class here with all kinds of different sorts of things. I just do not have the time to do that. There's actually also functions out there that can help you calculate when all holidays are. They're actually kind of interesting. You can look those up. Can you do half days? What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that, Bart? Like, oh, you mean for like holiday, like for your network days over here? No, you would not be. No. Now this only works with full days. Yeah, I know what you're getting at, where you have your teacher service days. Yeah, this is solely based on dates. So if you could factor that into your calculation a certain way. I would say the best way to do that is if you know you have a certain number of half dates, just throw a date in there and then call it teacher holiday or something. You're gonna have to fake that one, unfortunately. This only deals in whole days. Yeah. I mean, the only way in dealing with that, then you're starting to talk about work hours is what you're getting into, is that you worked 4 hours instead of 8 hours, and that just gets kind of crazy. So we can't really do that. Okay. All right, we need to keep moving here. Again, I could spend a whole time showing you date functions, but we got to spend some time on time functions and also talk about some of the other issues that we have with time. So let's come back to our PowerPoint and here we go. There's the slide I want. So let's talk about some time functions that we've got that we can play with. All right, so let's come back over here and let's do. So with time functions, we don't have as many. There's an hour, minute, second. We've also got the now, and we've got basically just returning the time. Basically what these functions do is that if I've got a time in a cell, so for instance, if I put in 7:30 p.m. here, and then I say, well, if I say the hour of that cell of D5, that's just going to return, in this case, 19. Now again, it comes up as 19 because I'm using military time. It's separating out the hour, right? And if I do the minute, NUTE, of cell D5, okay, that's 30 minutes. And then if I do second of cell D5, okay, that's showing me 0 seconds. This is just a way to break it up, right? We've got the hour function, the minute function, and the second function. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped over those with dates. We've got the same thing. You can do these in any order. Here's the year for this date. Sorry, I forgot to go through these. There's the year. Ugh, what's this? Uh-oh. I got something wrong here. What is that? This is always a good teaching moment. What happened? I entered a formula. I got something I didn't expect. Yeah, it's just a formatting problem. Oh, it actually is 2019. I just need to eliminate that. There we go. All right. Yep, formatting problem. That's all it was. All right, let's separate out the month from D1, and then let's separate out the day from D1. Okay, so if you need to pull out, for instance, here's the date, and you need to pull out years, months, or days, you've got those functions. And with time, if you need to pull out specifically the actual hour, minute, or second, you can do that with those functions. Okay. The now function is also considered a time function, all right? Because that actually does display a time there. Okay, once again, this is a formatting problem. Let's pick a different cell. There we go. Let's put now over here. There we go. By the way, notice, see it refreshed over here too? Because when you invoke it, it kind of invokes it everywhere. So that constantly updates. Okay, so there's the now function that's also considered a time function. All right. And hey, with this, if I just wanted to see the time and not the date, great. It's just a formatting thing. Look, just show me the time. There we go. That's it. You can do now or today and just display the time. Well, you don't want to do the time on today because that's just going to be midnight. Okay? All right. Now, before I do these calculations, there's something I need to get into. I know the slides are out of order, but I put them in. I did this purposefully because it just from a logistics standpoint, it made more sense. But before I go on, we need to have a talk. We need to have a talk about time, because there's a big problem with time when it comes to calculations, is that there's a problem with how we notate time. Okay, or what I'm calling here, this sounds like something you'd see on the Science Channel, right? The ambiguity of time representation. When we're dealing with times, there's a bit of a problem in general. And that's the thing, is that when I write something, when I write a time, there's ambiguity in what I'm representing by what I wrote. What does that mean? Well, let's look at an example here. So for instance, if I write that sequence of numbers there, what does that represent? If I write 04:15, if that's all I write, what does that mean? Or what does that represent? Now some of you might think, okay, I see one answer. I see one person says 4:15 a.m. That's correct, but the thing is, that's not the only thing that can represent. What else could that be? There's actually 4 things that could be. And this is why we have a problem. It's actually more about how we notate time. When we notate dates, it's pretty clear what you mean, except the difference between European and American in the way we just, in the whether it's MMDD, YYYY, and so on and so forth. Nope. Nice try, Kyle. Kyle said January 0, 1900, 4:15 a.m. Nope. That's still 4:15. There's actually 3 other things that this is. Anybody else want to guess? That what I wrote there can nope, not April. No, we're not dealing with dates. It all has to do with time. Anyone else want to guess? A ratio? Nope. No more guesses? All right, you ready? Here's the answer. Oh, sorry. Come back over to PowerPoint. Well, let me give you this hint before I give you the answer. Sorry, I forgot I threw a hint slide in here. Does 04:15 represent a time of day, or does it represent an elapsed time? Now think about it again and give me some answers about what does 04:15 mean. Any guesses? Looks like a guess coming in. Aha! There we go. Now we got one correct guess. Yep, Kyle nailed it. Yeah, here we go. Here's the problem with how we notate time. There's a lot of ambiguity in what I write. If I just write 04:15, the problem is that could actually represent one of 4 possibilities. It could mean 4:15 a.m. It could also mean 4:15 p.m. Now I know the leading 0 was kind of a dead giveaway that it doesn't mean that, especially if you're a military time person. But work with me here, okay? I could have written 12:15 and had the same issue, okay? 04:15 could represent 4:15 a.m. It could represent 4:15 p.m. It could also mean that I'm trying to signify 4 hours and 15 minutes, but it could also signify that I'm trying to express 4 minutes and 15 seconds. So we got a bit of a problem here if we're entering stuff into Excel. Now I'll tell you right now, if you just enter 0415 the way I've got it here, Excel is pretty much going to assume that you're talking about 4:15 a.m. The problem is that might not be actually what I want in the cell. I may be trying to say something else. And that's where we have to be clear with what's going on. So when we're entering time, it is important that, oh, here's that word, here's that F word again, right? It's important that we format the cells with a desired time format and or we enter time in a way that makes it clear what we mean. Again, it all comes down to formatting. It really does. I'm telling you, 9 times out of 10, people's problems with dates and times is really just a formatting issue. I probably could have said that in 30 seconds and said, see you later. Okay? It really is a formatting thing. So to be clear about what we mean, you have to write things a certain way in Excel. So if I actually mean 4:15 p.m., I should write 0415 p.m. You could also write 1615, and it's going to and Excel's going to know. When we're getting to dealing with elapsed time, you need to be more specific. And you actually need to, at least, and there's other ways around this, but the easiest way to make sure Excel understands what you're trying to express when you write it in a cell is if you're dealing with elapsed time, like 4 minutes and 15 seconds or 4 hours and 15 minutes or whatever, is to write it in full hours, minutes, seconds notation. So if I write 00:04:15, then it's very clear that I mean 4 minutes and 15 seconds. Or if I write 04:15:00, then it's very clear that I mean 4 hours, 15 minutes, and 0 seconds. Okay, that's the initial way around the problem, is just enter it that way when you start and you won't have any problems. The other way, of course, is to do it by formatting, and we'll get into that with some of our examples. So now let's go back and do some examples. So let's jump back again. I'm sorry that we had to do that. So let's generate let me go back to my examples here, and I want to generate a series of times. All right. Over here to Excel, let's do a new sheet, and let's just blow this up a bit, and I'm going to go 12 a.m., and then I'm going to go 3 a.m. just to be clear. All right, now what I can do is, as long as I've got the pattern and pull down, I can generate a pattern. This is just like before. Right, this is a standard thing in Excel. All you got to do is give it the pattern, at least the first two, and go from there. I mean, it can be anything. I could do, if I need to do every 2 hours, if I need to do every hour and a half. So let's say 12 a.m. and then I take the next medication at 1:30 a.m. Okay, well that's an hour and a half, or basically 90 minutes. There we go. You can generate a sequence. So it's just like the trick that we showed before with generating a series of dates, is that we can also generate a series of times. Okay? And remember, even though I'm only entering time here, there's actually a date there as well, right? It's January 0, 1900. Or is it? Ooh, there's something interesting there. Watch this. I'm going to show you something, and then we'll talk more about this in a bit. I'm actually going to come in here and do this. All right. And I want you to notice something here when I apply a date and a time format to the cells. All right. Let me go back and forth. Here's what I had, and it looked like I was just going 12, 1:33, blah, 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 12 p.m., 1:30. All right, through the day, and then, okay, 10:30 p.m., all right, now we're back at 12 a.m., so on and so forth, right? There's our sequence. And matter of fact, let's make the sequence just a little bit longer so you can see this. Oop, come on. I think I'm having problems with my mouse in general. Might be time for a new mouse. All right, now watch this. And this is going to play into something that I'm going to talk more about in a few minutes. I'm going to change the format, right, to add the date, and I want you to notice what happens with the dates. Right? Remember, there's dates here even though I only wrote times. Watch this. I'm going to come in here. Let's change it. All right. Now, again, it changed it to military time. But I want you to notice something. Look at the dates. Okay? Notice what? Are all of them, right? Remember I said we typed a date. I only typed a time without a date, and we always assume that it's, right, January 0. But what actually is going on here? What happens right here? Everybody see it? We go from January 0 to all of a sudden we're at January 1st. Because remember, we're doing a sequence here. We're counting up. We're not repeating. We're actually counting up. Now this is going to play into some other stuff that I'm going to talk about shortly with one of our other examples. All right? Has to do with when we're trying to sum up times that exceed 24 hours or minutes or any of those sorts of things. Right? But this little problem right here is something to notice. We'll talk more about that shortly. As a matter of fact, that is our next example, right? Yes, I believe so. Let's look at here. Yes, summing times that exceed 24 hours. So I got to open up a spreadsheet for this. So let's come over here, and I want this one. And let's blow this up. Okay, so let's deal with some stuff, some more stuff with time. Okay, so here's a little spreadsheet where we've got, in this case, we are talking about the number of hours worked. Okay, so on Monday I worked this many hours, Tuesday I worked this many hours, so on and so forth. And what I would like to get right here is I just want to find out the number of hours I worked, right? That's all I want to do. I just want to find out, hey, how many hours did I work? So do I need any weird sort of formula here? No, not at all. I can just use a regular old sum and say just add all these up. Okay, B2 through B8, right? Nothing crazy here. This is a basic standard Excel formula. Now I'm going to hit enter. And I get something very strange looking, right? I get 1.73958333333. Okay, what's the problem here? It's the F word again, right? What's the problem here? I get this weird number. What did I really expect? I expected some sort of time, didn't I? All right, easy enough, right? What's the solution? All right, let's apply a time format, right? Come up over here, and let's just apply time. And now let's look at this, and I want you to think. Look at this answer. I've got a result here of 17:45:00. Is that how many hours that I worked? Is that right? No, certainly not, is it? Well, what the heck's going on here? Why is it showing 17:45:00? This one's going to take a little bit to wrap your head around. Well, what's going on here? Anybody want to guess? Well, the hint is here. Let's change this back to a number. And let me put this out to a few decimal places. Look at this number. What did I tell you about how dates and times are expressed internally in Excel? We are getting this number of 1.73958 repeating threes. Okay? So let me tell you this. Here's the first hint. The reason we're getting, let's go back here, the reason we're getting 17:45, so 17 hours and 45 minutes, is that this number here, right, 73958333333 is 17 hours and 45 minutes. What's being left out? What's being left out or not being shown in the calculation? Any guesses? If this, right here, come on. Oh, if the 739, well, basically what we're losing is the 1 over here, right? That's what we're losing. And what does this 1 represent as far as the length of time? Well, 24 hours, right? The 1 equals 24, right? Basically, it's this. 1 is the 24, and the 0.73958333, whatever, is our 17:45. Okay? So really what we want to end up with is whatever 24, 17, whatever those add up to. So that's going to be 41 hours and 45 minutes. That's the answer that we need to get. Well, once again, this comes down to a display problem or a formatting problem, in that we don't want to display this as a serial number. And by the way, look, if I change this to a date, notice it comes out to 1/1900. And just picking a regular old time format doesn't solve it either. So we need a special format that says it should convert, let me switch it back over to here, convert the whole number, convert this whole number, the 1, or whatever we end up with there, into its actual number of hours, as opposed to displaying it as days. And the way we do that is it's not built in here. Oh, yes, it is. Is it under time? Okay, under the time formats, when I'm looking at the list here, notice that some of them, one of them looks like this, looks like 33, 30, 55. And when I format it with that format, right, because that didn't look like any normal format, right? I went in here into time, and there's this option here, and you look, and there's some times that look really strange. You see this 37, 30, 55. Like, that's not really a time. Well, what that is length of time with the hours. So now, look here, now I get the actual result that I wanted. 41 hours, 45 minutes, and 0 seconds, right? These two added together. So basically, it was all a formatting problem, all right? The regular time here, well, that is just the time part of the date. And here's the date part. And here's the number part. All of these, oh, these are all like clues to a mystery. Well, what it really is that I need to apply a type of format that's showing elapsed time. And that now gets me the 41 hours, 45 minutes, and 0 seconds. That gets me the answer that I'm actually looking for. Let's see, calculating the difference between two times. Okay, well, that's just the same as, okay, yeah, we got to bring up that spreadsheet. All right, so I need to come over here. Our next example, that is the negative time problem. Let's bring up this spreadsheet. All right, here we go. We've got another problem here. Similar issue when it comes to time. Here is a spreadsheet that's displaying the beginning of a shift and the end of a shift. Okay, how much I've worked. And I just want to calculate that amount of time. So one day I started at 8, I ended at 5:30. That came out all right. Now let me skip this one. Here we got 9 a.m. to 4:30. All right, all of these look correct. Okay, oops, all of these are fine. But this one is posing an issue. Okay, notice I worked an overnight shift. I started at 10 p.m. and it came out to 6 a.m. And if I even try to widen this cell, it's still coming out that it's not working. Why is this not working? What's going on here? Any guesses? Oops, sorry, wrong spreadsheet. Let me bring that one back up. You worked past midnight, change to the next day. Yeah, you guys are close. Yeah, basically what we're doing here, if you look at the formula, we're taking 1 and we're taking B2 minus A2. So right here we've got B3 minus A3, and that's causing an issue because it doesn't know how to handle it. Okay? So what we need to do is that we need to change what we're using, what we're doing here. Okay? All right. So what we actually need to do is use a function called absolute. Okay? And what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to change this to the absolute value between one and the other. So this is called abs, which has nothing to do with your actual abs. I'm going to change this to equals abs B2 minus A2. That's going to give us the absolute value of one minus the other. And now I'm going to copy that down. Okay. Now we're almost there. We're not quite there yet, but we're starting to get the correct format. Okay. but now we've got 16 hours. Well, that's still a problem because basically it's going the wrong direction. All right, so this is where we have to take things, where we have to get things a little more interesting. All right, the formula here becomes a little more complicated in that basically what we need to do, sorry, I just need to look at my notes right here. We get an invalid negative time. All right, so what we need to do is this. Equals if, we have to do an if statement. All right, and if B2 is greater than A2, all right, take B2 plus 1, comma B2 minus A2. Now that looks a little strange, but this is what works. Actually, then what I should have done is then have this formula all the way through. So let's copy this all the way down and all the way up. Oops. Sorry. Let's copy that and put it here. Oh, what did I do? I'm making a mess. Pardon me, I'm making a mess out of this. All right, well, did I type that wrong? Sorry, let me check what here. B2 plus 1, comma B2 minus A2. All right. Anyways, that formula gets us the right answer. Okay. The other way to fix this issue is to make sure that the dates are included, which I think is easier. Okay, this just gets a little wonky because we're going the opposite direction. Okay. All right. Back to our PowerPoint. Working with non-time of day values. So this is our last, my last example here, and I need to find, okay, which spreadsheet do I want to use with that? And that is, oh, I think I forgot to get that example out for you all. Okay. All right, I forgot to get the example file, but we can do this really quickly because it's the same sort of deal. Basically, what we're talking about here is when we're talking about lengths of time, like I said earlier. So let's say I've got a CD, you know, back in those days, a CD track lengths. Okay, and I've got a bunch of CDs, and I'm putting in the track lengths for all of these. All right, and I'm going to enter them in their correct format. All right. That's first off what's going to be very helpful in getting this to work correctly. All right, so let's put in, sorry folks, I forgot to include the sample file that I wanted. And let me just get one more. Maybe let's say another really short track here, 02. I just want to add up how long are all these tracks on my CD. Okay, so I add them up and it comes up with that format, 0245. So I got 24 minutes and 45 seconds. Now, this came out correctly because I wrote the times this way. But if I hadn't written them the right way, you might not get the right answer down here. Okay, so another way to deal with this is by formatting. I'm running out of time, so I'm sorry to rush through this. Where I could go into the number formats and come down here into custom. And if you scroll down, you can pre-apply to your cells certain formats. So for instance, hours and minutes, hours, minutes, seconds, minutes, seconds, and partial. So if you don't want to go through this business of writing it all out and you just rather would enter it so that you get the answers that you're looking for, just pre-format it with the correct formats. Just make sure you go to the custom category, all right? These are also in date and time here, but it's just a little harder to recognize. So again, if you don't want to go through this business of writing out the zeros and all this other sort of stuff, and you want to go, look, I just want to write 4:30, 5:15, 12:15, and have it understand that I mean minutes and seconds, then what you want to do is format those cells, just highlight, go to number formatting, go to the custom category, scroll down, and what you're looking for are the formats right here, either hours and minutes, hours, minutes, seconds, minutes, seconds, or minutes, seconds, and partial seconds. All right, and that's going to help out your formatting. Okay. All right, let's come back over to my PowerPoint. I think That was all. Oh, so here we go. All right, so let's do a little quick review before we wrap things up and then just open it up to general questions. So there's 5 important points to take away from here, and this session could have been twice as long. I could have done a whole session on time and a whole session on dates, but hopefully I've resolved some of the major problems. So first off, remember, Excel treats date and time as part of the same continuum of time. We humans tend to think of a date and time as different things. The reality is it's all the same thing as far as Excel is concerned. Number 2, Excel uses serial numbers to represent dates and time. The date is the whole number to the left of the decimal, and time is the partial number to the right. Point number 3, a date always has a time, 12 midnight, and a time always has a date, January 0, 1900. Understanding that no matter what you write there, there's always something else there. So if you really need to be clear, write the whole thing out. But just realize if I do a time without a date, there's still a date there. And if I do a date without a time, there's actually still a time there. So that brings us to point number 4. Unexpected results are usually a formatting problem. If you do something in a spreadsheet that involves dates and times, 9 times out of 10, if there's a problem, it's formatting. Okay? If you get a number and you expected a date, just change the format. If you get a date and you expected a time, change the format. If you expected a time but it's the wrong time format, change the time format. That's all where it comes down to. Lastly, time as we write it out can be ambiguous. Remember, it might mean hours and minutes. It might mean minutes and seconds. So you sometimes have to be very clear, again, either by way of formatting or the way you enter it, that look, I mean hours, minutes, seconds, or so on and so forth. Okay? All right. Well, hold on, I'm going to wrap things up here. That's all we've got for today. Thank you all for coming. Now, you don't need to run away yet. We're going to do some Q&A, but I'm going to stop the recording and then do the Q&A. So I want to say for all of you that are watching online, thank you for attending tonight's session, or I should say those of you watching this on YouTube. Thanks for attending this session. Please take a look at some of the other videos that I've got posted. Should be some more coming along in the following week, so hopefully you'll take a look at those as well. And I appreciate your attendance.